fantasy football, you dealing with the best. Keep it hype, authentic, this ain't nothing like the rest. With the Armchair Fantasy Show podcast, give advice for all the listeners to improve your stats. Yeah, we live on GoingFor2.com, Tuesdays and Fridays, this is what you want. Talking dynasties and daily drafts, and we just getting started, that ain't even the half. Yeah, so go ahead, tell your friends to join. Going for two, cause no one remembers the extra point. Hey, GoingFor2.com, the Armchair Fantasy Show.
What's going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 96 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Live every Friday and Tuesday night on Periscope, on Facebook, on YouTube, and of course, we're syndicated in all major podcast networks. I'm here tonight, as always, with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. Ryan, how you doing tonight, man?
Fantastic. Oh, yeah, you cut out a little bit on my thing. I mean, we got football tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'm pumped.
It's almost here, man. We're in week 3. We're in the quote-unquote dress rehearsal week, so I'm excited.
Heck yeah. And there's, like I said, there's NCAA tomorrow, man.
That's right.
Is awesome.
That's right. All right, and joining us tonight, he is the managing editor of Full Press Fantasy Sports. And he's also Going42's own Mr. Kyle Senra. You can follow him at, and I don't know how to pronounce this, man. You're going to have to give me your Twitter handle, Kyle.
So the Twitter handle is Yama_KS. The trick is you just barely pronounce the end.
Gotcha. So it's at NYAMAA_KS, right?
Yeah, kind of how, if you think David Njoku, right? You just barely say the N.
Good call.
That's way too. But yeah, you spelled it right. Yeah.
All right. Good deal.
I'm glad to be on this. I know as part of Going42, I've been watching the podcast a lot over the last year, and finally happy to be on it on the other side.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, man. Glad to have you, and glad to have you as part of the team as well. So, give us a little bit about Full Press Fantasy Sports, and what you do over there, and what you've been doing, in fantasy in general.
So, Full Press Coverage is a website that isn't specifically fantasy related. It's not even just NFL. It's all sports. Although NFL is the biggest concentration. They have at Full Press Coverage, there's a writing unit staff for every NFL team. I even write for the Packers as well.
Nice.
But one thing they do have is a fantasy, a fantasy outlet. So we'll say. So with Full Press Fantasy Sports, I decided to this year change from the editor of the Chiefs. Someone else took over, Braden Holseek, who does a phenomenal job covering the Chiefs, and I took over the fantasy side of it. And one of the first things I did was create a podcast for them. So I co-host the Full Press Fantasy Pod. And that's just what it is. It's a lot of talk about fantasy football, and lately it's been team-by-team interviews with, as when when possible, full press coverage members and writing staff. I know Ryan was on a little bit ago to cover the Ravens because we didn't have anybody and wanted to use his expertise.
You've been on twice, Ryan?
Yeah, I've been on twice in 2 weeks?
Nice.
Yeah, I know. It was, yeah. Definitely one of becoming our favorite guest so far. So appreciate that, Ryan. Your expertise is always welcome.
Careful.
I like hearing the word expertise with me, so that's cool.
Careful, Kyle. I had him as a guest a couple times now, and now I can't get rid of him. He's on my show every night. That's how Ryan started off.
You've been on too, Jeff. So I appreciate that.
Yep.
For coming on that one time, and maybe another future time. We'll see.
Yep, definitely, man, definitely. All right, so we got a lot to talk about, of course. So before we get to the news and notes here, I want to plug one more time our charity contest for DraftKings. If you visit Going42.com/charity, it's a free event. It's a free, free build your lineup. Everything is free. Only we're just asking for donations through our GoFundMe page, which is the link is there at the page as well. As little as $5, guys. You can't beat that. And DraftKings has offered up some prizes for us. We got some DK dollars, some DK T-shirts to give away. So, some cool prizes, free event, raise some money for charity. All the money goes to fantasycares.net, which raises money for the holidays for kids to have toys that don't normally get toys during the holidays. So I think that's an awesome charity to commit to. I think we're a shade under 800 right now. I think we're at 770 last time I checked. So we got about a week to go. The cutoff date is August 31st. So if you haven't joined yet, please do so. Again, Going42.com/charity will get you to that. All right, let's get to the news and notes.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, Kyle, we'll start off with you first. The big news, of course, coming out of the games last night was Cam Newton's foot injury. He just got back from the shoulder injury. He was seen in a walking boot. The word now is that it was just a mild sprain. But are you worried about Cam Newton? I mean, he seems to be. I mean, it's been in his career he hasn't been very injury prone, but over the last few years it seems he's been more so injury prone. Are you worried about him at all?
I guess the one aspect that you really worry about is the rushing production now. How much are they going to let him run? I mean, are they going to just avoid designing runs for him altogether, and all his rushing will just come from scrambling? I know last year was his the second least amount of rushing attempts that he's ever had, 101, and it's also the least amount of rushing touchdowns he's ever got, with 4.
Right.
So it seems like last year with Norv Turner, he wasn't running quite as much as he was even just the year before, 2017. He had 139 attempts, which actually was a career high. Strangely, I mean, we think about his big 2015 season with the 15 rushing touchdowns, and he ran more two seasons ago. So it seems more about getting the ball out of his hands as a passer. The talk out of camp this year was a new throwing motion. He was, a different mechanic so that it wouldn't be as much stress on his shoulder, because he's had 2 straight off seasons of shoulder surgery as well.
Right.
So the injury concerns keep piling up, kind of take away, I think, his upside as a runner. So I don't think everyone's really drafting him anymore to be a top 3 quarterback. But still he's kind of going around the range of a borderline QB1. So I think that's fine. With all the passing weapons that they've accumulated over the years, it seems like this might be one of his better passing attacks.
Right.
Whether Greg Olson's healthy or not, I think you still have him and Ian Thomas, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel. Chris Hogan is a deep threat, and Cam does like to go deep, so it might work with them. So, yeah, I think we'll see maybe more upside as a passer, but definitely not the rushing upside that we're used to seeing, certainly in 2015.
All right. So, Ryan, over to you. I know Cam had been a value there for a while because of the shoulder. Started to rise up in ADP a little bit. Does this ankle thing sort of drop him back down in draft, you think?
I think it'll drop his value a little bit, but if it's not as bad as they're saying, he's right there. What they're doing is they're building that team for him not to have to run as much. Like, it's not they're doing it because he's getting older. They don't want him to. They want him to not get hurt, which was stupid because they shouldn't have played Cam Newton in that game.
Yep.
Nobody started their top tier quarterbacks, and what's Cam got to prove?
You're right.
But they got those guys who can dump off and run the ball with. I mean, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Chris McCaffrey, all those guys are run after catch guys, so Cam doesn't even have to drop it down the field to put up yards. I think he's still firmly in that top 12 QB range. Maybe more towards the middle or end of it, but he's going to be a consistent fantasy contributor, and I think he's going to be a great value.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think this ankle injury is going to scare people off a little bit, and I think that you can, again, buy him in a value. I've got actually 2 drafts at the exact same time this coming Sunday, and if Cam Newton falls, I'm definitely going to be drafting him. I think that offense is set up for success.
At the same time?
At exactly the same time. At 8:30, I think, on Sunday night. I got my main redraft league, my home redraft league on Yahoo, and then I have my one of my sleeper leagues I've got at the exactly same time. So I'm going to have 2 devices, my iPad and my cell phone, and I'm going to be drafting back and forth. So it's going to be interesting.
I guess the only hope there is that you end up with like a 101, 102, and then a 111, 112, and you can kind of hope
exactly
on opposite ends of the turn.
Exactly, that is the hope, because it's going to be a live draft, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, he's at 804 right now for his ADP, and it probably could be later.
I think that's about where I got him, because I got him in another league, redraft league, that I got him earlier when he was a value, and that's kind of where he was going. So he's kind of back to where he was. All right,
like you said, a QB1 that looks like QB9, QB10 is where he's going. So
exactly.
I think that's where he should be going, like Ryan said. So.
All right, let's move over to the running backs here. We got 2 guys to talk about. One of them is Zeke. We've been talking about him pretty much all off season. The Cowboys have made him an offer to make him the 2nd highest paid running back, and the word is that he got back on a plane and went back to Cabo. So I'm guessing he's not signing that contract. Ryan, how worried are you about Zeke now?
I'm terrified for Zeke. I have 0 shares in it. I'm kind of happy about it because I don't love Teddy Pollard. But he also retweeted Joe Thomas, who said throughout the course of NFL history, if you're the best player at your position, or clearly one of the best, when you re-sign your 2nd contract with the team who draft you, usually you're the highest paid by 15 to 20%. And that's been Zeke's only interaction on social media since this, which was agreeing with that. He wants to be the highest paid player. I think he deserves to be the highest paid running back. He's 24, man.
Yep.
Hold out, Zeke.
Yep.
Get that money.
Get that money.
Don't get hurt. And if he comes back without signing a contract, what's to say they're not going to run him into the ground and let him walk?
Yep. Yep. Definitely.
I think it's going to be very Bell-esque, similar to Gordon as well.
Yep. I think both of them could go into the season as well. I just recently traded in our Writers League. I just traded Zeke away. I got Kenny Galladay and Zach Ertz in the tight end premium league, so I was excited about that. And I then flipped Zach Ertz in a package deal and got Chris Godwin. So I was kind of loving that trade there. And I was kind of nervous there for a minute. I was like, oh, Zeke's going to sign, the very next day after the trade. I was kind of worried about that, but now it looks like it may go into the season a little bit. What about you, Kyle? What are your thoughts on the Zeke situation?
Well, with all this risk now, I know the one player who maybe dropped from maybe being the 101 say January 1st to now. Where is he now? He's in the. I'm looking at Todd Gurley's average draft position right now is 204 in PPR leagues. I mean, really, there's so much risk involved with both. Gurley with the chance of re-injuring his knee, and Zeke that he doesn't play at all. I think I'd actually rather have Gurley at this point. I mean, he's going to play. It's just how much is he going to play? Whereas Zeke, I guess the possibility is 0 games played this year. Although the one thing I'm hearing is, if he shows up by week 10, he accrues a season, right? And so that's one less season of team control, easier to get to free agency.
Right.
So maybe he might prioritize that and show up for week 10. But he also might decide to say, screw it, and I'm just going to protect my body. That 1 year of free agency is worth holding out for the season just to not get injured.
He can't go to free agency, man.
Yeah, I think he's got 2 years left.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually he'll get to free agency, but I think he's got 2 years on his contract.
It carries over.
Yeah, unlike Melvin Gordon. If he accrues that season, though, if he shows up week 10, accrues that season, then he does have that one more season. He could hold out again, I guess, if he wanted to.
Which is really funny. But
all right, let's talk about Nick Chubb a little bit. There's some word that he's going to be used more in the passing game. We've already kind of seen it a little bit in the preseason. And even before the preseason, last year at the end of the year when Kitchens took over, he was involved more in the passing game as well. What are you doing with Chubb, Ryan? If he's involved in the passing game, where are you putting him at?
I think Chubb's somebody who's slowly creeping up into that late first round range where you're taking Dalvin, James Conner, right around there. And I'm to the point I may take him over those guys and even Mixon just because of the fact he is going to be involved in the passing game. He's in a better offense, much better offense, which is kind of hurting. I think it's going to hurt Mixon. And then he's going to get the ball, man. And he has no real competition until, week 12?
I think it's
week 10?
Week 10, but I mean, I can't imagine Kareem Hunt gets a lot of work in that first week.
No, and why are they going to take the ball away from Chubb?
Yep.
Because he is one of the top backs in the league. I think he's supremely talented, and I think he's much better than Kareem Hunt anyways.
Yep. What about you?
I think
Go ahead, Kyle.
Sorry, I interrupted. I jumped the gun there.
You're good.
I think the interesting thing here is, like Ryan mentioned, he's a late first-round pick now, basically, and he's getting up to the point where there's a debate between him and his teammate, Odell Beckham Jr., of who might get taken first. And we just recently did the Browns episode of the Full Press Fantasy podcast. And that was actually one question we had. Would you rather have Nick Chubb or Odell Beckham? And, I mean, you might almost come to team dependent. If you prefer running backs, Chubb's the answer. If you prefer receivers, Beckham. But I think both can produce, among the top of their tiers at their positions. So I definitely think Chubb should be going in the first round now. As I mentioned, the comparisons with the other running backs, I think the concern with Connor is he going to lose work to Jalen Samuels? You don't really have that fear with Chubb, at least until Kareem Hunt shows up, but that's more than half a season. And the offense is way better than the Bengals offense, so that kind of puts them ahead of Mixon. And then you look at Dalvin Cook and just the talent around, specifically on the offensive line between those two teams, you think that definitely has to favor the Browns.
Yeah, definitely. I actually just recently had a Sleepers Expert League, and I had the 104, and I took Chubb at 104. I know it was a little bit sort of contrarian because I'm in 10 leagues, so I wanted my share of Nick Chubb, so I went a little bit above where he should have been drafted and took him at the 104. And my team actually looks pretty good on paper. I got Nick Chubb, I got Todd Gurley in the second round, I believe I got Mike Evans in the 3rd round, so I was excited about that team for sure. So, I mean, I took the risk of getting Chubb at 104. And we'll talk about him a little bit later as well. I got him on my list of players to talk about later on tonight. All right, so the first... What was that?
Talking about another example of early pick. I was at the Midwest Fantasy Expo last week.
Nice little plug.
And the Sunday morning before, we did a big charity draft. There were 36 analysts, 3 different leagues happening at the same time. It was actually a lot of fun. And Chubb went 106 in my league anyway. Shane Manila took him. So yeah, he's starting to really get up there.
Yep, definitely. I love Nick Chubb. So. Gotta be careful. You gotta use Nick's first name. You can't use his last name. You can't say I love Chubb because then it just doesn't sound good. It's not kosher.
I thought you were definitely going there, man.
I almost did. I said, gotta put that Nick in there. All right, let's go ahead and get to our first segment here. We're gonna do some busts tonight. These are some guys that basically aren't gonna pay off their ADP. They may have a good quote unquote NFL season, but from where they're being drafted in drafts, they will be considered a bust in fantasy. And Kyle, we'll go to you first. Give us one of your busts this year. Kyle?
Oh, sorry. So actually I'm going to start off in the 2nd round looking at Adam Thielen.
Ooh.
So my big concern with Thielen is the last 2 seasons he's been a wide receiver 1 primarily because of the amount of volume and the targets that he's getting. Whereas I've always kind of viewed his teammate Stephon Diggs as a guy that didn't need necessarily as many targets to produce. I mean, Diggs has kind of that ability to take any play to the house, and so he can kind of on fewer targets can still kind of maintain a certain production. But really, Thielen's needed to be very target based. I think he's had at least 140 targets in each of the last 2 seasons. So to me, the worry is how much that offense changed after John DeFilippo got fired last year and bringing in Gary Kubiak, and how much they like to run. I look at his game log for the last 4 games last year. He had 7, 2, 6, and 4 targets in each of those games. And earlier in the season, I mean, he was constantly getting double-digit targets almost every game. So if they're going to run more and pass less, I think him losing volume is going to prevent him from finishing as a wide receiver 1. Now, I don't think necessarily this is fair, but if you prorate those last 4 games without DeFilippo, that's only 76 targets on the season, the average of those 4 games. So I don't expect it to be that low. I think he's still probably going to eclipse 100 targets, but not necessarily the 142 or 153 that he saw last year.
Right.
My issue with him is, again, I'd rather have Stephon Diggs, and I'm looking at PPR ADP right now on Fantasy Football Calculator. Thielen's going 210, and Diggs is going about over a round later at 312. Yep. I mean, I'd much rather have Diggs there and hit another running back in the 2nd round. So it's not that I still think Thielen's going to be a wide receiver 2 on the year, but going at the late 2nd round is just a little too high for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that one because I mean you saw what he did last year. Last year, like you said, he kind of faded away. He was like the wide receiver 1, like the wide receiver 1 the first half of the season. He was breaking records, and then all of a sudden he just kind of fell off and disappeared, and he was like the wide receiver 40 plus, I think, at the end of the season. So for that second half, so yeah, I agree. I think that could definitely be something to worry about, especially with the 2nd round value that you're taking there. That's kind of a risk. And unlike you, I do prefer Diggs over Thielen as well because he has that ability to take it to the house. All right, Ryan, give us your thoughts on Thielen and then talk about your bust.
I agree that I have Diggs over him. I have them right next to each other in my rankings, though. I think he'll still get volume, but I definitely can see them going more towards the running game. Gary Kubiak there definitely opens up the running game because he's one of the best coaches for scheming the run, which is my perfect segue into my guy who I have as a bust, and that's Philip Lindsay. We talked about last week a little with him, where he's a guy who benefited from a really good system and opportunity, but it wasn't always consistent either. So we had Kubiak, who's had everybody who's been 1,000-yard rushers under him. We had the Justin Forsett thing. Was that last week we talked about?
Yep.
Where Forsett had his only 1,000-yard season of his career with Kubiak, and he's not the only guy that's happened with. But we've seen games out of Lindsay where he's disappeared, where he's had 14 carries for 24 yards, 14 carries for 30 yards, 10 for 46. Like where he hasn't been completely that every down person based off of their matchup. and it might not be sustainable. Plus, Royce Freeman's a guy they like. They picked him high. When they had at their preseason games with the starters, both Freeman and him had the exact amount of snaps at 8 apiece. Plus, Devontae Booker even got in there with 4 snaps with the starters. So they might be closer to a full-blown committee than him being the guy there, which makes it terrifying because you don't know which back they're going to lean on any given week. And right now, he is going just a little bit too early for me as where is he? In the 4th round. So I'm kind of shying away from him. And I'd rather take a chance on a Miles Sanders or even like James White, who you know what you're getting out of them.
Yep. Yeah, I think I'm with you on that as well. I think actually I'm taking Royce Freeman in a lot of my leagues late, way after Lindsey, and I think it's going to be a sort of a timeshare there. And I think I like Royce Freeman in that role with that offense the way it's going to be run. And Royce Freeman's more of a banger, more of a guy that's going to get those short yardage touchdowns. And Lindsey's their big play guy. He's their Tariq Cohen, so to speak. So I'm with you on that one. I think I'm not drafting him really in any of my leagues. I'm taking Royce Freeman over him every time.
Also, with run block or pass blocking is going to come into the factor too, because Flacco is a statue back there.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're going to need a guy who's going to give him that extra protection. And 180-pound Philip Lindsay ain't that.
Yeah, Lindsey can be the best blocker in the world, but when you're outweighed by 100 pounds, you ain't stopping anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, I'm going to stick with the running backs here since you went running back, Ryan. I'm going to go with the rookie, Mr. Josh Jacobs at the 308. I just don't know if he is going to get the volume necessary to be an RB1 that he's being drafted at. We talked about it a bunch of times on this podcast, that a stat that I believe it was, I forget who, John Lobb. He came on the show early on in the season and had a great stat that in John Gruden's coaching career, he's only had one RB1 in fantasy in his entire coaching career, and it was Charlie Gardner for the Raiders. So that's pretty telling stat right there that, Gruden doesn't really commit to a running back. He doesn't, have the greatest running scheme in there. And I think if you look at Josh Jacobs' workload, in college, the most carries he ever had in college was last year. He had 120 carries. That's not really an every down kind of back. And I don't think they view him as an every down kind of back. So I don't know if he gets that volume necessary to be an RB. I know he gets the passing down work, but there's Antonio Brown's there, Tyrell Williams is there. They have a pretty good tight end. I don't know if he gets that volume. So I'm going to go, I think he's still going to be a decent rookie running back, but at the 308, some of the guys that are going around him, you're looking at guys like, hold on here, I had it pulled up just a second ago. Chris Carson at the 310. Even the other rookie, David Montgomery, I think gets more volume than he does. He's at the 309. Marlon Mack at the 403. Derrick Henry at the 407. I prefer most of those guys over Josh Jacobs, so I'm passing on Jacobs anywhere that I get a chance to draft him.
If you include special teams, Jacobs only had 10 more touches total than Pollard in college.
Wow.
His last year. Everybody's complaining about not having volume, and they don't think he can carry the load. Obviously, they're different builds, but they're coming from the same amount, basically, of touches.
Yeah, the other thing, too, that gets me, too, is that so the greatest college coach that we've ever seen had him as a backup on his own team. You know what I mean? Damian Harris started on that team. So that kind of tells me right there that, if Saban doesn't see him as an RB1, then why would the NFL see him as an RB1? So
Najee Harris had more yards rushing than him too.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
He was third rushing at Bama.
Good point.
I guess the only thing I would say in defense is that Alvin Kamara didn't see a huge workload at Alabama either, so that might end up just being more the way that they do things at Alabama. But I definitely agree.
Tennessee.
Oh, he was at Tennessee, right? It was Drake. Oh, sorry, it was Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon Drake. Right. Yep.
I don't really know college that well.
Yeah, neither do I, honestly.
I remember them the year of their class and coming in watching the film, and then after that, I completely forget who went to which college.
Yep, 100% agree. I'm with you on that one.
But I do agree, especially with something Jeff mentioned. I think I prefer the other rookie, David Montgomery, as well. I know everyone, as soon as the draft was over and the landing spot, the dust kind of settled on that. Everyone was saying how much better the Josh Jacobs landing spot was than Montgomery, but I didn't really see it that way. In both instances, there's a pass-catching running back, whether it's Tariq Cohen or Jalen Richard, so that's going to kind of limit both rookies' upside as a receiver. There's, in both cases, a kind of an early down veteran that's there, whether it's Doug Martin or Mike Davis. And I know Mike Davis is good, but Doug Martin's definitely shown us more in his career. So I mean, if I had to choose between the Oakland offense led by Gruden or the Bears offense led by Matt Nagy, I'm taking the Bears offense.
Yep.
It might be unpredictable with the touchdowns. They tend to do a lot of weird things in the red zone. But I mean, before the draft, I preferred Montgomery to Jacobs, and I think the landing spot hasn't changed that for me.
Yeah, I think if you look at last year's workload with Tariq Cohen and Jordan Howard there, Jordan Howard was in the top, I think, 6 or 7 running backs in touches last year. I think he had 270 touches last year, and he's gone. I know they got Mike Davis there, and he may take some of those touches away, but even if you give Montgomery 220 touches, 230 touches, I think he's an RB1 in that offense. So I'm just not buying Jacobs at all. All right, Ryan, we'll go back to you. Who's your next bust?
I'm going with Russell Wilson. And it hurts. I love Russell Wilson, but everything's not working out for him. Like, even last year where he was absolutely fantastic, if you put it this way, last year was his most touchdowns he's ever thrown with off of his least amount of pass attempts since his second year in the league. So he dropped from 553 pass attempts with 34 touchdowns to 427 attempts with 35 touchdowns. So his touchdown percentage was 8.2, which is absurd in the league. When normally a great QB is around that 6 to 7 range. So that's going to regress back to it. He lost Baldwin. He lost Metcalf now. He has Tyler Lockett and David Ward, the number? No, who's the number 2 now? Jerron Brown.
Yep.
Do we really want to trust an offense as that? And they have Chris Carson, who they're committed to, Rashard Penny, who they like, who's still going to get a ton of work. He doesn't really have a great tight end. There's just not a lot working there in the passing game, and he is going to be in front of some guys with some serious talent quarterback, and with a lot more talent surrounding them. I'd rather take the chance at the lower draft position. I'd rather take Jameis 4 rounds later, and I could be comfortable with him scoring more points.
Yeah, I agree.
And not worried about it.
The rushing upside isn't quite there because that last year he barely rushed at all, and I think he didn't get any rushing touchdowns at all. So if he continues to play like that rushing upside's not there, then he's not going to be a top 12 quarterback in my book.
Yeah, his rushing attempts last year, he had 67, which is also lowest in his career. And the 376 yards was his second lowest, and like I said, 0 touchdowns.
0 touchdowns. Yep, that's the floor that you don't get with him when he doesn't rush the ball.
Right, the way people view him now is a lot different than what it actually is. He's viewed as a running quarterback,
and he's not.
When in all reality, he's not.
Yep,
he's just elusive in the backfield to create time for himself, but it's not something that's going to last if he's not super efficient, which isn't replicable.
Yep, 100% agree. All right, Kyle, give us your second bust.
Well, we're going to go back to another rookie running back. I think it's the thing with rookies, right? We're never really sure how they're going to do, and some people seem to take a couple of them far too highly. And I was going to talk about Darrell Henderson, but it seems like people have come down a bit. He's dropped a little bit in ADP. I still think it might be going a little early, but the guy I want to talk about now is Miles Sanders. Looking at ADP, it looks like he's going smack dab in the middle of the 5th round, and it looks like a giant committee with the Eagles. I like Sanders a lot next year. Jordan Howard is going to be in the final year of his contract this season, so he's probably gone in 2020. And really, I think at that point, it gives Miles Sanders a huge opening to carries. I mean, at that point, Darren Sproles has to retire, right? Maybe not, but still, it's so crowded there this year. And Sanders has had issues with fumbles. That's been maybe his biggest limit. And if you're going to be that crowded with such a great offensive line, where really we've seen guys like Josh Adams succeed, kind of as an undrafted free agent, right? It seems like anyone can kind of go into the Peterson offense and succeed. So are they really going to risk, even if he is the most talented, are they going to risk a guy that fumbles a lot that often?
Yep.
So redraft, I'm kind of out on Sanders. I love him in Dynasty. Stashing him for next year is great, but 5th round, I think I'd much rather go running back early and take some receivers in the 5th round. I'm looking at guys like Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, and Mike Williams. They're all going after him in a lot of cases. So those are guys I'd rather invest in the 5th round.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that as well. I think that Miles Sanders is a great dynasty pick. He's a great, I think for 2020 he might be the top back in Philly, but I think I agree. I think right now he is going to be in that mix with Jordan Howard, and it's not really going to be an even timeshare. And I don't see him being, at least not where he's drafted. Now, if he ends up falling for whatever reason, then yeah, go ahead and draft Sanders, because he has a chance to be that number one running back there. But from where he's being drafted, no thanks. I'll pick up somebody else. All right, and I'll give my one last bust, and then we'll go to a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll do our bold predictions. So my bust, as you can see, I'm a 49ers fan, if you didn't already know. My bust is Tevin Coleman. He's being drafted at the 506 right now, and I'm on record as saying that Breida is actually the RB1 there in San Francisco. I think he gets the quote-unquote Devontae Freeman role in this offense, and Tevin Coleman gets the Tevin Coleman role, because Tevin Coleman is Tevin Coleman, and you can't cop anybody better than Tevin Coleman to himself. So I think he takes that role. I think Breida is the Devontae Freeman role. I think that they both get about a 50-50 share, but if they're both getting 50-50 shares, I don't want a running back in the 5th round with the 50-50 share. I think there's better running back out there that can get more volume. I think even a guy like Lamar Miller. I know everyone hates Lamar Miller, but if you look at what he puts up as far as volume, he's a decent running back. Even looking down at some of the upside guys that you got down there, like you do have Miles Sanders there, Austin Eckler if Melvin Gordon doesn't sign, Sony Michel is right there in that range. I'd much rather Sony Michel over Tevin Coleman. So I'm just not buying Tevin Coleman. With that said, I'm buying Matt Breida everywhere. I think I've got in my 10 leagues, I may have Matt Breida in like 8 of them, and that's because I haven't drafted the 2 that are tomorrow. So I might have Matt Breida across all 10 teams eventually. But I love Matt Breida. I think he's the RB1 there, and I think Tevin Coleman is probably an RB1A, but not in the 5th round. I'll pass in the 5th round. Any thoughts on Tevin Coleman, Ryan?
I don't think Tevin Coleman's good, but I think he has a role in that offense, but it's not the starter. And I've heard there's been rumors going around that McKinnon's going to be back sooner than later too.
Yeah, there's rumors that he might be back sooner. He's already, I think, doing individual drills already.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty in the offense, just in general, whether not even just performance, which is questionable now, but who they're getting the ball to at any time, at any position other than Kittle.
Yep.
It's all a bunch of question marks. All those running backs are kind of similar, and we're in that lane. Like you said, Coleman's Coleman, man. He runs outside zone and dump off passes, and that's it.
That's it.
And I'm not trusting that as a guy who's going to be my RB2, RB3.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
No, thanks. All right. Take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, guys, we're going to give our bold predictions for the season.
In the unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. GoingFor2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
All right, guys, welcome back. I'm here with Kyle and Ryan, and we just gave our bust for the season. Now we're going to talk about some bold predictions, but before we do that, I want to plug once again the charity contest that we got going on DraftKings, GoingFor2.com/charity. It's free to join. Donations are being accepted through my GoFundMe page. You can find all the information right there at GoingFor2.com/charity. And to kick off our bold predictions, Kyle, we'll go to you first. What you got for your first bold prediction for this season?
Well, I almost think this is kind of a nice little symmetry between our last segment and this first one. We ended with a 49ers player, and this bold prediction involves a 49ers player. And once again, not so positive light on the 49ers. Sorry, Jeff.
It's all right.
So George Kittle is going as a top 3 tight end, and probably deserves to be so. In some cases he's going as the second tight end in a lot of drafts, and that's where I take pause. I think we've seen Ertz do it more consistently. Hasn't been just one season like Kittle. But the biggest problem with Kittle is actually his chemistry with Jimmy Garoppolo. And Kittle's record-breaking season for yards by a tight end last year, that happened mostly with Nick Mullins at quarterback and some CJ Beathard, but really Jimmy G played 2.5 games there, and I looked it up. Kittle only has 1 touchdown in the regular season from Jimmy G over, I think it's 10 games that they've played together. But that's not really good numbers. I mean, a lot of his big numbers came when with Mullins. So I remember looking up, if we took the average of those 10 games and prorated it over a whole 16-game season, George Kittle would have finished outside the top 12. Now, I think part of that is, again, I don't think 1 touchdown is necessarily realistic. Given a full season with those 2, he probably will get more than 1 touchdown. But my bold prediction is that George Kittle finishes outside the top 6 tight ends, and he finishes a low-end tight end one instead of a top 3 towering above everyone else like everyone seems to think he is.
All right, that's a good one there. I'm actually going to challenge you just a little bit on that one. I hope you're prepared to take my challenge. But so in preseason right now, not preseason, sorry, in training camp, Kittle is actually the most targeted by Jimmy G in training camp. Now, I know you don't follow him quite as much as I do, so I don't know if you would have even known that. But he is by far, like almost double the number 2 guy that he's getting right now in targets. So I do think he gets the targets. Now, I will agree there is going to be some regression. I think he will regress in receptions. I think he will regress in targets. I think he will regress in receiving yards because what he did last year is just it's unrepeatable, really, for a tight end. However, I think the offense will be better. I think he makes it up for touchdowns. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that. I appreciate the bold prediction. I do think that Kittle will regress a little bit, but I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that one. It's a good, very good one.
The one thing I'll add to that is there were a couple times. I remember the Denver game where I think he was close to setting a single season yards game for a tight end of that game, and it was just a couple big catches where he was left completely wide open. So I think teams will have a lot more film on him this year, and I don't think he's going to get wide open chances like that. But yeah, if he can grow with Jimmy G, I think he can certainly pay off where people are paying. I don't buy it yet. Yeah,
I will agree with you that he had a lot of big plays. Matter of fact, at one point in the season, he maybe even ended up that way. He led the league in yards after the catch, which for a tight end is just unheard of. I mean, literally, no one's even ever come close to that. And he led the league at least for a good portion of the season, if not for all of it. I got to go back and look at the end of the season, but that's crazy for a tight end to do that, to have those big, humongous plays. And those are, like you said, they're kind of unrepeatable. That's why I think he will regress a little bit in the receptions and in the yards category, but I think touchdowns will go up a little bit. All right, Ryan, let's go to you. We talked about my team enough. I hope you got one that's not my team. What you got for your bold prediction?
Leonard Fournette leads the league in touches this year.
Oh,
in touches, wow.
So throughout his career, he's played 21 games and he's averaged 21.85 touches per game. He's never had a game under double digits. He's only had 1 under double digit in carries with 9. They feed him. That's with playing through injuries and missing time with injuries in games. He played most of last year hurt. That offense isn't built for the pass. The defense isn't built for the pass. They want to get him more involved in the passing game, which they talked about a lot this offseason. And if they put that together with the way they run the ball with him averaging 24, 25 touches a game isn't out of the question, which makes him a fancy value where he's at. If he stays healthy, he's a guy who that team is going to lean on. And if you look in the playoffs, the year before he was there, he had 77 touches in 3 games. Like, he's a guy they lean on. And if they want to compete at all, that offense gets through him and makes Nick Foles' job as easy as possible.
All right, that's good stuff there. I like it. Leads the league in touches. Good stuff. All right, so my bold prediction is going to be Nick Chubb ends the season as the number 1 overall non-quarterback player. I think he is this year's MVP for fantasy. I think that he averaged 2.9 receptions when Kitchens took over last year, which is about 3 a game, which is about the same that Mixon averaged as well, and people are all over Mixon this year. I think that it's going to even go up even more with Duke Johnson not being there. I think that offense is just unbelievably, loaded with OBJ there and Jarvis Landry and David Njoku, and I think Chubb benefits greatly from those guys because they can't stack the box. And I think that at the end of the season, I think Chubb is going to lead the league in fantasy points as far as non-quarterbacks go. So I'm going pretty bold there with Nick Chubb. I know everybody's got a couple different running backs there, the top 4, Kamara and Zeke if he does come back full-time, and CMC. But nope, it's Nick Chubb for me this year. All right, Kyle, talk about that prediction a little bit, then give me your second one.
Well, yeah, I think for Chubb to do that, he's gonna need a massive touchdown year, I think. And I mean, he is one of the best goal line backs in the league at this point, and certainly as good as Kareem Hunt is, I think Chubb is better suited for that role. If that offense is as good as we think it's going to be, and all these players are going high, I mean, Baker's a top 5 quarterback, we expect this offense to score a lot. So I think Chubb definitely will get the opportunity and be on an offense that gives them the position to maybe have that 20 touchdown upside. So yeah, I could definitely see that. And to just touch on Ryan's, I know last year my bold prediction was that Leonard Fournette would lead the league in rushing touchdowns. I love the additions they made to the O-line. It didn't really help when the entire O-line got hurt, but that whole unit kind of coming back healthy will certainly help that. And they took away competition from Fournette. Like TJ Yeldon's not there. I mean, they brought in Alfred Blue, which I think everyone criticizes Lamar Miller for being the kind of boring player, but Blue is the boring backup to the boring player. So. Yep. I like both those calls. And we're actually going to stick with running back, the current Browns running back. I'm talking about a former Browns running back. Duke Johnson, my bold prediction is that he's going to be top 5 in the league among running backs in receptions. I think he now goes to an offense where, I mean, Lamar Miller is probably his biggest competition to be a pass-catching back. And so looking at Duke Johnson's career, the least amount of receptions he's ever caught in a season was last season, actually, with 47. And as Jeff mentioned, that was in a year where they had some competition at running back, and Chubb, as the year went on, started to catch more passes. And even before that, Carlos Hyde was kind of involved in the passing game, but not really. But certainly once Chubb took over, it really limited what Duke Johnson could do. Just the season before, he caught 74 passes, and I think that put him in top 5. So maybe it's not so bold because it's kind of something he's done before. But I mean, Lamar Miller. So I talked about Duke Johnson. The least amount of catches he ever got in a season is 47. For Lamar Miller, 47 is the most he's ever got. 2015, and that was back with Miami, not even with Houston. So he kind of catches passes 31, 36, 25 over his last 3 seasons with Houston. But I think Bill O'Brien getting a weapon like Duke Johnson, who is a player that I remember there was rumor before that 2017 season that the Browns may want to move him to be more of a slot receiver. I think that was to try and get Isaiah Crowell on the field more, and look up what that did. But I think Bill O'Brien's creative enough offensively that he could do some really interesting things with Duke Johnson. And I mean, Kiki Kuti being hurt right now, and I haven't really heard updates on his status, but it seems like it's at least a fairly significant knee injury that'll force him to miss time, and in that time maybe Duke Johnson slides into a bit of a slot receiver role there. So I think top 5 in RB receptions this year is definitely within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I was going to mention Kiki Kuti as well if you didn't, but yeah, because with him being injured and him being injury prone for that matter, even if he starts week 1, he'll get injured again throughout the season. I think Duke Johnson steps into that role and picks those targets up. And they don't really have a pass catching tight end per se. I know they got a couple guys there that are athletic that might come into their own and be pass-catching tight ends, but they don't really have that guy right now. So Johnson's that middle of the field is Johnson's to have if Kiki Kuti is not there. So I agree. I think that Johnson's going to have a huge season there. The only thing that kind of detracts from that is that the Houston offense has typically not been one that passed to the running back. I think over the last 5 years, they have the fewest targets to the running back position. But when you got Duke Johnson back there, you got a playmaker. You got to find a way to get him the ball. So I agree. I think Johnson could have a humongous year this year. So good stuff there. All right, Ryan, what you got for your bold prediction number 2?
I'm going Carson Wentz ends the season as QB1. Last year, the Eagles averaged 37 pass attempts a game, so 626 total attempts. That's with Foles getting time, obviously QB, within 5 of those games. Wentz, the year before, was an MVP caliber player, and he didn't have the weapons that he has right now. Their depth chart is probably one of the best pass catching in the league. They have one of the best lines in the league. I mean, he has Ertz, Goddard, Alshon, Aguilar, Arcega-Whiteside, who we saw show out last night. Goddard's blown out. It's
Arcega-Whiteside. Arcega-Whiteside. You're saying it wrong.
I'm not Mike Tyson. I don't have the list. Miles Sanders is a good pass catcher. Sproles is a good pass catcher. Even Clement Smallwood can catch the ball. Jordan Howard will leave him out, but they're a team that's built to score a lot of points and extend drives. And they have the most talented offense in the league, and if they're throwing the ball around and he stays healthy and they keep him clean, he has all the opportunity to finish just as good as Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. I mean, their offense is close to as good, if not better, all around as a whole than those other teams.
Yeah, I think another thing too with Carson Wentz, and maybe you mentioned it and I missed it, but I think with
D-Jax.
D-Jax, and then being 2 years removed from his injury, I think, I know he had that back injury last year, but the other one I believe was it was an ACL or was it some kind of knee injury. I can't remember what he had this 2 years ago, but I think the rushing ability comes back. I think that's kind of giving him a little bit of a floor where he can rush the ball. Last year he didn't do it quite as much. I think that if that comes back and he's fully healthy and rushes the ball, that also helps him with his point totals as well. So I love that call.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention Sean Jackson, which I don't know how, because he was one of my main points. He didn't have that field stretcher last year.
Yep.
And now he has one of the best field stretchers of our generation, and it's perfect to help extend that offense.
Yep, definitely. I love it. Love it. So I got a bunch written down here. I'm going to have to pick one that I like the most. I'm going to go with... this one's kind of going to be very contrarian. Everyone's probably going to kill me for this one as well, but I'm going with Kirk Cousins finishes as a QB1 inside the top 12. I know last year he was killed for the way he played last year. They had Case Keenum who lit it up, and then they thought Kirk Cousins was going to come in there and do the same thing. He really had an okay season. He's currently being drafted as the QB19, which is pretty close to undrafted in 1 QB leagues. And I don't see how you can have Thielen as a top pick and Diggs as the top pick and Dalvin Cook in that backfield and not put Kirk Cousins in that top 12 of quarterbacks. And the one thing, because I saw him a lot here in Washington, D.C., and the best thing that he did was play action pass. And I don't want to say the Washington Redskins had a terrible run game pretty much every year that he was here, but that play action pass was still his best weapon. And if you got Dalvin Cook back there compared to the guys he has here in Washington, if he can play a pass to Dalvin Cook, it opens that up tremendously. And I think that he's going to have a humongous season. He's going to have a bounce-back season. I think the pressure of his contract is off. Everyone last year talked about the $84 million guaranteed, and, they were kind of bashing the Vikings for that. But I think all that pressure has been removed. It's just a matter of him going out and producing now, and I think that he definitely will do that. I think he ends up in the top 12 this year for quarterbacks.
I don't think that's that nuts because, at the start of the year last year, he was within the top 12, and I think he might have even been in the top 5. He had a couple of 400-yard games. 2 of his first 4 games, he had a 425 with 4 touchdowns, and then 422 with the 3 touchdowns. And, in both those games, he threw 48 and 50 attempts, and really it's just at the end of the season, he after week 11 didn't have any 300-yard games. Barely threw the ball 40 times at that point, so we saw it happen. So to your credit, it's something that's, I think, within the realm of possibility, but I say the only thing against you is that if they really are going to run more, it may limit the amount of times he's able to pass. And I don't know if he has the touchdown percentage efficiency to, on a low volume, be able to be up there. But certainly if everyone wants to run the ball, but if they're down losing games and the defense doesn't hold up, they don't really have a choice but to air it out. So.
Yep, definitely. And on Facebook, I have one of our biggest fans, AJ Smithington, pointed out that he was QB 13 last year. But I think that people kind of forgot, how good his first half was, and they looked at his second half. So he's being drafted so much later now. I know he was QB 13, but it was based a lot on, like you said, those first 6 or 7 games where he was just lighting it up with 400 plus yards, and they weren't running the ball. There was there was 3rd and short, 2nd and short, and they were still passing the ball. In the second half of the year, when Dalvin Cook came back, they were running the ball a lot more, and I think people are kind of scared of that now. But I think it actually gets back to a more balanced offense, and I think that he ends up being in the top 12, based on his full workload. So I got
crucified on Twitter a couple months ago because I said that too. Crucified for it.
Yep.
I think it was bad, but no, I think you're right. He has all the weapons there he could ask for.
Definitely. All right, Kyle, what you got?
In terms of a hot take,
did you only have 2? We can go to Ryan.
Well,
we'll get one more from
Ryan.
Yeah,
go to Ryan. I can think of one more real quick.
All right.
I'm good at improvising.
Give me one more, Ryan. What you got?
Noah Fant finishes at top 12 tight end.
Oh,
I think
wow,
tight
a
end,
rookie.
tight end landscape is miserable. I mean, it's getting a little bit better, but I think Fant's a guy who translates well into performing as a young tight end, because similar to how we saw Evan Ingram, he's not really a tight end. He's an oversized wide receiver.
Yep.
And he's going to be working in the middle of the field, which is Flacco's go-to. I think he's a guy who he can feel comfortable dumping it off to. He can hit in the end zone. He's probably going to be their top red zone threat other than maybe Sutton. But he's a guy who he doesn't have to score a ton of points to be a top 12 tight end. I mean, you could have 5 touchdowns last year and be in the top 12. And I think he has the possibility and the potential volume to get more than that and be a low-end guy who you can get for free.
Yep. That's a good call, because you're right. He's not really a true tight end. He's not going to be blocking very often. I don't think that he's that kind of guy. I think he's more of an Evan Ingram type, where he's just athletic and he's going to be running those routes like a wide receiver and getting those passes from Flacco.
And I'm telling you, man, Flacco, like, the way Flacco loves his tight ends is insane. We went to that game in Baltimore, like 2 years after Heap retired. He still rolled up to the game with Heap in his truck.
Nice.
All he deals with those people is tight ends.
Nice. All right, Kyle, did you get one more hot take for us?
Is it a bold prediction to say that the Bears defense is going to disappoint people? I mean, they're going in the 8th round.
That just kills me when I see that.
Yeah, I know. Even the Rams defense is going like 10th round. That's still getting a little too early. But I guess one that I could say is I think Marvin Jones is actually going to finish in the as a wide receiver 2 this year. And
nice.
He's going in the 9th round, and I feel like there's a lot of receivers that are going before him that I think could really disappoint. I think of someone like Emmanuel Sanders coming off the Achilles tear, someone like Dante Pettis, who, if Kittle is the number one target there and getting so much, it's really going to let us limit what Pettis does. I think Jones has a connection with Stafford. He's a really up and down wide receiver, so I think overall there'll be weeks where he disappoints, but there's also going to be weeks where he wins you the week. So I think Marvin Jones is being slept on a little too much right now.
All right, yeah, I like that one, because that offense I think is going to be much improved this year. I had one of my bold predictions on here as well. I'm not going to give that one because I don't like it as much as this other one I'm about to give, because I've been talking about this guy quite a bit on Facebook, and I just want to bring him up one more time. But yeah, I had Matt Stafford as a bounce back candidate this year, and I think that Marvin Jones helps that bounce back proposition. I think Hawkinson in the middle there sort of occupies the middle of the field. I think they've got a good running game. They got Kenny Galladay there. I think that overall, even Demi Amendola, I think will be a decent, deep PPR player there. I think that offense is going to be much improved. All right, so my last bold prediction is, and I can't say his last name, so a good thing he's got a very unique first name that I can say, so we'll know who we're talking about. But Dare, the running back for the Bucks, will be the top running back for the Bucks by week 6. I think he overtakes Peyton Barber. I think he overtakes Ronald Jones, and he is their RB1 starting from week 6 on. I think Peyton Barber last year, we saw, he had a top 10 workload last year. I think he had more carries than more touches than Melvin Gordon. I think he was 9th overall in touches. But he finished the year as RB31 for total fantasy points and RB44 in points per game. So that workload did nothing for you as far as Peyton Barber goes. Ronald Jones can't catch, can't pass protect. And if you can't catch and can't pass protect, you can't play in Bruce Arians' system. You just can't do it. As much as I've been drafting him in drafts there, I've kind of fallen out of love with him after reading some of the camp reports. If you can't pass pro, especially with Jameis Winston back there, I think that he's going to be relegated to a backup role. And I think that this guy Dare, they came out and said it. Arians said it, that he's their second best pass protector in their backfield right now. He's been lighting it up in the preseason. So if you're playing Dynasty, go out there and stash this guy. Dare, and I can't pronounce his last name. I'm going to spell it. It's Ogunbowale. Remember that name, guys. I think he's going to be a great player going forward. He's looked good in the preseason, looked good in camp, so remember that name.
Ogunbowale?
Yeah, that sounds right. I've heard it pronounced once, and I was like, I'm not even going to attempt to say it tonight because I'm just going to butcher it. So his first name is Dare. So luckily there's not a lot of guys in the NFL named Dare, so we'll know who we're talking about. All right, let's do some late round flyers now. And Kyle, we'll go to you and give us one of your late round flyers for redraft right now.
I mean, as a Packers fan, I keep talking about like the Marvin Jones with the Lions. I talked up a few Bears players. I'm about to talk up another one. Kind of betraying my team here a little, but that's given the stuff I believe in. So Anthony Miller is going in the 11th round right now, and so one of the most frustrating things about the Chicago Bears offense is that it does seem like they do prepare for their opponents really well, and Matt Nagy really is trying to find matchups on a weekly basis that'll work. There were some games where Allen Robinson got 14 targets. There are other games that he got 4 targets.
Right.
And Anthony Miller was also kind of up and down like that. But as a rookie, you sort of expect that, and you can kind of forgive him a little more for it. He also dealt with a shoulder injury last year, but he managed to play through it, and I think he only missed 1 game. So, even if he was hurt, he still managed to produce at times. There was a stretch last year where he got at least 6 targets in like 4 or 5 straight games. So he is expected to take a step up and expected to be a lot more involved in the passing game and could really solidify himself as the number 2 target there. We mentioned where David Montgomery going in the 4th round, and even Allen Robinson right now, he's going in the 6th round. Tariq Cohen's going in the 6th round. And suddenly you look at Anthony Miller's down in the 11th round. That gives you such a great value for a player who has upside to be the number 1 player on his team on a week-to-week basis. It probably won't end the season that way, but I think you're talking as that late in the 11th round. I think Miller's a great flyer to take.
All right. I love that. I love that call. Absolutely. All right. There's a question on Facebook. AJ's yelling at me over here. He typed it in all caps. So let me ask this question to the two of you before we get to the next late-round flyer. He wants to know what's up with Darwin Thompson. Are we buying into Darwin? Ryan, are you buying into him at all?
Yes, I'd almost made one of my bold predictions was having him involved. We'll say that for another night. But yes, I completely believe in him. He's getting raved about. He's looked great. They talked about his pass protection being great, and in all reality, that team's going to run a lot of plays. They're going to score a lot of points. They're going to give up points on defense. So they're going to be in shootouts just like last year. And the more they're on the field, the more carries the running backs are going to get. And even if Damian Williams is their lead back and gets a 60% share, there's still going to be a lot of carries to go around, and possibly more than most other teams because of how fast-paced that offense is and how much it's going to open up the deep passing for Tyreek Hill. So I think he has the opportunity to be a flex-worthy play. It might not be till weeks 3 or 4, but he's definitely a dynasty stash, and he's definitely somebody I'd take a late-round flyer on now.
All right.
In redraft.
Nice. Now, do you want to go ahead and give us a late-round flyer, or are you going to use that one as your late-round flyer?
I am not using him as a late-round flyer because I thought it was kind of too... I thought everybody was too much on him where I was going to. I was going to leave that whole group of rookies out of this. So I'm going old, boring, and C.J. Anderson. He's going 14.05. He is in a timeshare. He may not be a 50-50 split, but it's going to be close to it. They did their snaps in the preseason game, according to PFF. With the starters, it was the snap count was 8-8 for him and Kerryon Johnson. I think he's going to get the red zone carries. He showed last year what a monster he was in the red zone. And I think that's a team who's going to run the ball and run it a lot. And it's going to be more of a committee than we expected because Matt Patricia came from that Bill Belichick school who's always had a separate goal line back.
Good point.
Even when he's had talented runners.
Good
and
point.
Anderson fits that mold. So for what he is, he could be a guy you could start in a pinch. You might not like it, but he has a good chance of punching one in.
That's a good point. Yeah, I like that call a lot, especially with Kerryon Johnson's injury history and the fact that he's been injured pretty much every year of his NFL career and college career. He's had some nagging injuries here and there. I mean, nothing too major, but enough to keep him off the field. So I like that pick a lot. All right, I'm going to go to a wide receiver that I like, that I've been grabbing in pretty much every league I've been in, even in the Scott Fish Bowl. As you can see, I have the shirt on right now. I got this guy in my Scott Fish Bowl league as well. It's Mr. Zay Jones for the Buffalo Bills. I think we saw in that first preseason game when Josh Allen, his first 10 passes, 5 of them went to Zay Jones. I just think he targets the hell out of Zay Jones. He loves Zay Jones. He didn't play in the second game because he had a concussion, but I think that Zay Jones is also probably their touchdown guy as well. I think when they get in close, I think Zay Jones is a a big receiver. I think he came out of college as one of those big athletic guys, and I think Zay Jones finally has that breakout season that we were all expecting to have, 2 years ago in his rookie year, and then even last year he kind of had it towards the end of the season. But Zay Jones is my late round flyer. I've kind of grabbed everywhere. All right, Kyle, give us your next late round flyer.
So I kind of had a two-parter for this one, but thankfully Ryan helped out because C.J. Anderson was one of those. The point I was trying to make is that one of the things that's most important for fantasy is running back depth. The need to just stash a bunch of running backs. I mean, we saw it last year. I know I won a fantasy league where in week 16 I started Elijah McGuire, Damian Williams, and Matt Breida. Right? That's not what someone would have expected to say, even in the season at the start of the year. But having those guys, I remember in that particular league I had McGuire most of the season. So having those guys and stashing them and keeping them so when they can elevate their roles, they maybe end up being league winners for you. I mean, C.J. Anderson was that last year. If you held on to him even after he got released by the Panthers and got signed for a cup of coffee by Oakland and then eventually to the Rams, if you kind of held your way through that, you had a really productive running back at the end. So, going in the 14th round right now is Nyheim Hines from the Colts.
Nice, I like it.
And it's sort of between him and Anderson, it's really kind of a pick your poison. Like, what do you want? Do you want to go with a bunch of early down running backs early and then save the pass catchers for the end? That's great for Hines. If you want to take a bunch of pass catchers early, like a Tariq Cohen, James White, and come back with the sort of bruising touchdown dependent running backs like Anderson, it's good too. So you have options either way, but I think running back depth is so important that throughout your draft you want to constantly be picking up running backs. At almost every tier there's value to be had, and I think where Hines is going, I mean, he caught a lot of passes last year, and not something that Marlon Mack does really well. And I mean, Dante Foreman, that he's not really a pass catcher, even if he does make the Colts. Jordan Wilkins, Spencer Ware kind of caught passes in Kansas City, but really, I think Nyheim Hines is the most experienced pass catcher, even in his young career. So, for 14th round flyer to running back, I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, I love that. I love Nyheim Hines. I actually made a trade, and I'm so glad it didn't go through, but I made a trade offer to one of the guys in my league who's got Nyheim Hines, and it involved Sony Michel. At the time, he was, that knee injury, was kind of scaring everybody, and I was trying to get rid of Sony Michel, and I'm kind of glad it didn't go through because Michel looked good last night, but I was trying to get Nyheim Hines everywhere I could because of that PPR upside that he has, and all my leagues are PPR, and I think Nyheim Hines is that PPR guy, and in the offense is that powerful. I think that's a good thing to own, so love Nyheim Hines, getting him late. All right, Ryan, what you got for your next late round flyer?
Well, Hines was my next one, so I got one left, and that's Traquan Smith. He's number 2 receiver in New Orleans, and he was severely underrated last year. He had 427 yards, which isn't anything special, but he didn't really have significant playing time until week 5, where his snap count went from 34% to 70%, and he averaged over 4 targets a game before he got hurt. And then he showed that he could produce off of small targets and with the big playability and being fed the ball. And he got injured and didn't really come back the same afterwards. And the other thing with him, he ranked third in the league for QB rating when targeted. So Drew Brees' passer rating when targeting Traquan Smith was 133.4, which is absurd.
Almost perfect.
It was almost perfect. And he also averaged 15.9 yards per reception, which was 19th in the league. So he has a big playability, which is the perfect thing to offset Michael Thomas, who's their volume guy. I think he's the guy who takes a step forward. They still have a good running game, but it's still Tavis Murray might be a slight step down from Ingram, and he's going to be their third target there, maybe fourth now because everyone likes Cook. But I think if anything, Cook helps him because his role's so different as that deep threat. And if he's fully healthy, he could be a guy who is also free in drafts at the exact same ADP as all the last guys we talked about. Anderson, Traquan Smith, Nyheim Hines are between 14.2 and 14.5.
Wow, yes.
So they're all in that range.
That's a good call. I love that call. I think that, especially in best balls, I love Traquan Smith in best balls for sure because he will have those games where he's going to have 4 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns like he did. I think, that I think it was a Monday night game versus the Washington Redskins where he just blew up. And
right.
I think
and
that
he had another one with 13 for like 140, so he can get targets.
Yep, I agree 100%. I think that offense is good enough to support 2 receivers, and I think he could be that number 2 guy for sure. All right, so we've talked about almost all of my late round flyers already. I have one guy left, and it's going to sort of make Ryan happy on this one, and that's Miles Boykin. I've loved Miles Boykin since the pre-draft, since before he was ever put on any team. You know, I hated the landing spot for him originally with the Ravens. You know, being there with another rookie receiver in Hollywood Brown, and just being the Ravens and being a running team and having Lamar Jackson as their quarterback. But if we see what Miles Boykin has been doing in preseason so far, I mean, he's been killing it. I mean, he looks better than Hollywood Brown. I know Brown played last game, was his first game playing for quite a while, so we can't really judge too much on that. But Boykins is a dominant receiver as far as his body style, his athletic ability, his speed, his height, his everything. I think when I wrote him up, I think I said his best trait was his hands. There was multiple times on film where I watched him where he caught like a short 5-yard pass where the cornerback's basically hanging on his arm and the ball literally does not move in his hands. His hands are so good. So I love Miles Boykins, and I'm curious to get Ryan's take on Miles Boykins. What do you think of Boykins?
I think Boykin is in the conversation to be their wide receiver 1 this year. He played last night 44 yards. He showed he could run after the catch as well, which, I mean, it should be common sense with how big and fast he is, at 4.44 or 4.4 240 at that size, which is ridiculous. And he's been getting connections from Lamar all offseason. He was a guy who I wasn't as high on coming into the process, and I'm very pleasantly surprised. I think him and Hollywood are nice kind of complements to each other with just pure speed and kind of that all-around across from him and Boykin. But I think he has an opportunity to be number 2 in the team of targets behind Andrews.
Yeah, another thing that I wrote up in the article, and you can go to GoingFor2.com and check it out. Just I used to search for Boykins. I'm sure it'll come up. But I pointed out, this is before I knew where he was going. I wrote that he was an awesome blocker. For a team like Notre Dame where he played, that they were a running team more so. There's some blocks where he was headhunting linebackers and taking them out. So that gets him on the field, I think, a lot in this offense for the Ravens, where he's a great blocker on the outside. So if he's on the field more, they can't really put Hollywood Brown out there on that one receiver set and have him block because he's just too small to block anybody. So putting Boykins out there more often than Hollywood Brown in those short situations is a plus as well. I think he just being on the field could definitely make a big impact to that offense. So love me some Miles Boykins.
Blocking is huge. Keep him on the field.
Definitely.
And I actually looked up your report. Do you remember your NFL comparison for him?
I don't actually. Who was my NFL comp?
Faster, bigger Anquan Bolden.
Oh, there we go. See, perfect. Right there, the Ravens offense. Faster and bigger Anquan Bolden. I love it.
I mean, now that I'm seeing that changes even more. But yeah, it makes it a better fit. It was still Flacco. But now I like Boykin a lot.
Yeah, Boykin is perfect. All right. Do we want to do one more round of these guys, or do you think we're good on this? Kyle, you got any more good ones there you want to talk about?
Well, I know I'm going to make you happy with this one. I'm finally speaking positive about a 49ers player. And he's going in the same range as the last few guys we talked about. C.J. Anderson, Nyheim Hines, even Traquan Smith. 14th round again, you have Marquise Goodwin. And like Traquan Smith, he's going to be a deep threat. And so I mentioned the one thing with Kittle that I wasn't so high on is up until, I guess, this year in training camp, he didn't really have much of a chemistry with Jimmy G. But someone who did was Marquise Goodwin. I remember when Jimmy G originally took over in 2017, that 6-game stretch, Goodwin was the leading target on that team by, a significant amount, and it seemed like he had developed instant chemistry with him. So we saw it. We didn't see it last year because in the games where Jimmy G was healthy, Marquise Goodwin was, I think, recovering from an injury. So we didn't really. It's been a while since we've seen those two on the field together, and I think with the injuries that the 49ers are facing with Trent Taylor, and I know Deebo Samuel isn't quite up to speed as they maybe would have thought he was. It looks like Goodwin's role as a starter is pretty solidified in that offense, and he plays an important role as a deep threat. It's going to be a guy that's going to be really boom or bust. I mean, some weeks he'll get you nothing, but some weeks he could get you 80 yards and a touchdown on 2 catches. So, play him. I mean, if you're taking him that late, you're playing him specifically for, just streaming matchups and stuff. But I think he's definitely worth a flyer.
I agree 100% actually, and surprisingly enough, in the preseason, he's played the starter. I think there was rumor at one point that they actually might cut him, but in the preseason, he's been the one starting, along with Pettis, where they, everyone's kind of saying it's Deebo Samuels, but it hasn't been Deebo. He's been playing with the twos. So if Marcus Goodwin is starting in that offense, I think he's a definite buy. He's a big play threat. He just needs one reception over the middle. He can take it to the house at any moment. And just speaking of him, a funny story, if you probably take this on YouTube and just Google it, do Marquise Goodwin and type in elephant. He actually has a video out there of him standing on the back of an elephant in the middle of the jungle in the water, and he jumps off the elephant and catches a football. It's ridiculous. So it's definitely worth looking up. So it's a pretty awesome video. All right, guys, that's a wrap for the show tonight. Kyle, we'll go to you first. Give us your Twitter handle where we can find your show at, and just anything else you want to talk about.
Well, first off, this is, I think, really, it's really sort of telling on this. You forgot the forgotten fantasy player.
Oh, you're right. I did forget that.
Have you ever forgotten that before?
I have not. That was the first time I've ever forgotten it, and I don't even know, because usually I copy-paste my show notes. Do you have a forgotten fantasy player?
I do, actually.
All right, let me hit the drop.
One thing you've mentioned on the show before, someone who's won you a title, and so that was the first thing I thought of. I went back to the first time I ever won a fantasy title, and it was 2014, which also shows the Minnesota have been playing this for too long. I had two running backs that really helped me. It was Eddie Lacy, Arian Foster, right? But, I mean, I love playing a third running back as a flex, and I remember just picking up guys that year, and someone stuck eventually, and it was Trey Mason for the LA Rams.
Ooh, nice.
And I mean, eventually, he had a great year in 2014, 179 carries only, but he had 765 yards, over 4 yards a carry, only 5 total touchdowns. But it was when the touchdowns came, it was all towards the end of the season. He didn't start playing. I think that was his rookie year, and I think he was coming off an injury, and he didn't start playing until week 5 or 6. And then suddenly he came in, and the first week only had 5 carries, but then the second week broke out, 18 carries, 85 yards, and a touchdown. And he had some great performances week 15 in the fantasy playoffs, or actually week 16 in the fantasy playoffs, sorry. So fantasy championship game, 13 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown.
Nice.
And, he was somewhat involved in the passing game, but really just a good touchdown machine for them that, the next season they drafted Todd Gurley, and that was it. He didn't even last his entire rookie contract, and he was cut. And unfortunately now he's in the CFL. He played for Saskatchewan last year. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL and is just, I think, late last year, and is expected to miss all of this season. So kind of hoping for a good recovery for him in the 2020 season. But I think definitely someone who some people may have forgotten, but I'll always remember him for that 2014 helping me win a fantasy title.
I definitely have forgotten about him. That's an awesome pull, and thank you for reminding me to do that segment, because you're right. I totally forgot about this segment, and that's one of my favorite segments to do there. So good stuff there. You're a fan of the show, I know. So glad that you had one ready to go.
And that's great. That might be my favorite one I've heard so far. Like, he's the only guy I'm like, I kind of scratch my head, like, I kind of remember him.
Yep, definitely.
I just wanted to brag about winning a title, so that's the natural segment that I really wanted to
That's the best way. That's the best way to do it. All right, Kyle, give us where we can follow you at. What tell us about your show a little bit, where we can find it at, and anything else you want to plug right now.
So you can follow me at Nyama_KS, as Jeff spelled it at the start, NYAMA_KS. My podcast is the Full Press Fantasy Podcast. You can follow that at FPC_FantasyPod. I write articles for GoingFor2, although I haven't done too much yet. I'm planning to do a weekly series for DFS. Yahoo. I know Yahoo DFS. It seems like I'm hearing more and more podcasts that have it as an advertising. So it's
taken off.
It's starting to grow, so I'm definitely going to keep that going this year. I do write some articles for Full Press Coverage as well, so you can check it out on fullpresscoverage.com. I think that's everywhere that you can find me.
All right, good stuff. Ryan, where can we find you at?
You can find me on Twitter, Ryan Surplus at Fantasy FB Connect. And obviously you can find me GoingFor2 and right here every week on Tuesdays come the season.
Yes. All right. And, of course, I'm Jeff Lambert, and you can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. I will be here Tuesday and Friday. Friday will be our DFS podcast, and Gerson and Tim will be back for our DFS show. So Once again, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on Tuesday, next Tuesday.